Springboks versus All Blacks 2023 Rugby World Cup final. The Rugby World Cup final is meant to be decided by great tries, not by the colour of a card. But in 2023, South Africa and New Zealand served up 80 minutes where the referee's whistle stole as many headlines as the rugby. In the first half, All Black captain Sam Cane was shown a yellow card for a high tackle. Minutes later, the new bunker review system upgraded it to a red. It was the first red card ever shown in a World Cup final, and it meant New Zealand had to play more than 50 minutes with only 14 players instead of 15. Then, to pile on the drama, Aaron Smith thought he had scored a brilliant try, only for the television match official to rule it out for a knock-on earlier in the play. South Africa held on to win by a single point, 12-11, and became back-to-back world champions. After the game, World Rugby condemned the abuse aimed at the referees. Springbok fans saw grit and glory. All Black fans saw red and ruin, and honestly, it felt like the bunker review itself was wearing green and gold that night. The real man of the match might just have been the TMO. France versus South Africa 2023 Rugby World Cup quarterfinal. This quarterfinal was meant to be a showcase of rugby brilliance. Instead, it turned into a game where the refereeing was almost as famous as the rugby itself. France were the hosts, South Africa were the defending champions, and the atmosphere was electric. The match itself was a thriller, ending 29-28 to the Springboks. But the big talking point was the officiating. Cheslin Kolbe charged down a French conversion, and millions watching argued he left his line too early. If that kick had stood, France would have had 2 more points, and in a 1-point game, that could have been the difference. On top of that, reports after the match suggested there were 5 major mistakes by the officials, including calls at the breakdown and missed infringements in the air. Referee Ben O'Keefe was in charge that night, and Antoine Dupont summed it up by saying the refereeing was not up to the level of the contest. For France, it felt like they were knocked out not just by the Springboks, but by decisions that went against them at the worst possible times. In Paris that night, Les Bleus were left asking if they lost to South Africa or to the whistle. All Blacks versus Springboks 2013 Rugby Championship. This was a Rugby Championship game in 2013 between New Zealand and South Africa, 2 of the best teams in the world going head to head. In the first half, Springbok hooker Bismarck du Plessis smashed All Black fly half Dan Carter with a thunderous tackle. Arms wrapped, shoulder down, it looked perfectly legal. But referee Romain Poit thought otherwise and showed him a yellow card. That meant 10 minutes in the sin bin, and South Africa had to play with only 14 players instead of 15. Things only got worse. In the second half, du Plessis was shown another yellow card which added up to a red. He was gone, and the Springboks had to finish the match a man down against the All Blacks, who went on to win 29-15. Afterwards, the governing body in charge of the Rugby Championship admitted the first yellow card was wrong. They even wiped it from du Plessis' record. But of course, that did not change the result. For South Africa, it felt like the match had been decided by the whistle. For New Zealand, it was another Eden Park victory. And for everyone else, it was the night the biggest hit didn't come from a player. It came from the referee's pocket. Australia versus New Zealand 2022 Bledisloe Cup. Bledisloe Cup matches are always fierce, but the one in Melbourne in 2022 ended in a way nobody could believe. Australia had fought their way into the lead, the clock was in the red, and all they had to do was kick the ball out and close out the game. Fly half Bernard Foley lined up a penalty inside his own 22. He was taking his time trying to steady himself. Referee Mathieu Reynal had already told him to get on with it. Then came the moment that stunned the rugby world. Reynal blew his whistle and penalised Foley for wasting time. It meant New Zealand were suddenly awarded a scrum just metres from Australia's line. The Wallabies were still trying to work out what had happened when the All Blacks scored the winning try. Final score, 39-37 to New Zealand. Nobody had ever seen a test match end like that. Technically, the referee was within the laws, but using it at that exact second felt brutal. Australian fans swore they were robbed of a famous win. New Zealand fans just grinned and reminded them that the whistle is part of the game. That night in Melbourne, the clock was not Australia's enemy, the referee's patience was. France versus Wales 2017 Six Nations. The Six Nations has seen its share of drama, but nothing like Paris in 2017. France against Wales turned into the longest test match anyone could remember, pushing past 100 minutes of play. It was chaos. Scrums collapsed, penalties were reversed, and time seemed to stand still. The most controversial moment came when French tight head prop Luini Antonio went off for a head injury assessment with just minutes left. Under the rules, that allowed France to bring back on Rabah Slimani, a fresher and stronger specialist prop, for a 5-metre scrum. With the new man anchoring the front row, France piled on the pressure until they finally crossed for the match-winning try in the 100th minute. Wales were furious. Later on, tournament officials reprimanded the French Federation, saying the head injury assessment had not been handled properly. There was no proof of deliberate cheating, but the damage was done. For Welsh fans, it felt like their team had been robbed by a loophole. For French fans, it was a famous win after one of the strangest endings ever seen. Referee Wayne Barnes was in charge that day, and in Paris, his whistle seemed to last forever. Some matches are 80 minutes. This one felt like a lifetime. Wales vs Ireland 2011, Six Nations. Sometimes a robbery does not need high drama, it just takes the wrong ball. That is exactly what happened in Cardiff in 2011 when Wales played Ireland. Ireland were leading when Wales took a quick line out. That is legal, but the law is clear. It has to be with the same ball that went into touch. The problem is they used a completely different ball. Nobody on the pitch noticed, not the touch judge, not the referee, and not even the Irish players. Scrum, half. Mike Phillips grabbed it, sprinted away, and scored a try that never should have counted. On the scoreboard, it was 7 points, but in reality, it was daylight robbery. The game finished 19-13 to Wales, and that illegal try was the difference. Afterwards, the replays showed everything in slow motion. The law book said no try, the referee had said yes, and the Irish fans could not believe their eyes. The damage was already locked into history. For Ireland, it was one of the most frustrating losses of the decade. For Wales, it was rugby's version of a 5-finger discount. England versus Wales 2018 Six Nations. England against Wales always delivers drama. And in 2018 at Twickenham, the big talking point was not a crunching tackle or a last-minute try. It was a decision that went down as one of the most infamous TMO calls in Six Nations history. England were leading when Gareth Anscombe chased a kick into the in-goal area. He dived. England's Anthony Watson dived, and both men reached for the ball. On the big screen, it looked like Anscombe had grounded it first. That would have been a Welsh try. But referee Jérôme Garcès went upstairs to the TMO, and the verdict came back. No try. Play on. At the time, it felt marginal. Later, it turned out it was not marginal at all. World Rugby reviewed the footage and told Wales the grounding was clear. The try should have been awarded. Instead, England clung on to win 12-6. The gap on the scoreboard was exactly the value of that decision. For Welsh fans, it was proof that even with video technology, you can still get robbed blind. For England fans, it was just another day defending Fortress Twickenham. And to this day, Welsh supporters will tell you that the scoreboard at Twickenham is still missing 5 points. New Zealand versus British and Irish Lions 2017 third test. A Lions tour is supposed to be decided by big moments of brilliance. In 2017, the series finale in Auckland was decided by one of the strangest refereeing calls you will ever see. The score was tied at 15, all with just 2 minutes left. New Zealand kicked long, the ball ricocheted, and Lions hooker Ken Owens found himself accidentally offside. Referee Romain Poit blew for a penalty. That was it. A shot at goal, and New Zealand could have won the series. Eden Park was already buzzing with expectation. Then came the twist. After a long discussion with his assistants, Poit changed his mind. He downgraded the penalty to a scrum, calling it accidental offside. In that one moment, the chance of a New Zealand win vanished. The game ended in a draw. The series ended in a draw, and nobody really knew what had just happened. Later, Poit himself admitted he should have stuck with his first decision. For the All Blacks, it was daylight robbery on their own turf. For the Lions, it was a slice of history. The final whistle blew, and ever since then the series has been remembered not for tries or tackles, but as the tour that ended with a French referee pulling a plot twist straight out of a soap opera. New Zealand versus France, 2007 Rugby World Cup quarterfinal. World Cup quarterfinals are meant to test nerves. In 2007, New Zealand versus France in Cardiff tested patience, sanity, and the definition of a forward pass. The All Blacks dominated possession, territory, and just about everything except the scoreboard. Then, midway through the second half, came the moment French fans remember as genius and Kiwi fans still call a daylight robbery. Damien Traoré drifted wide, passed inside, and Yannick Josian went over for the try that turned the game on its head. The only problem? The pass was clearly forward. Television replays showed it, the commentators shouted it, everyone at home saw it. Everyone except the referee, Wayne Barnes. The try stood. France held on to win 20-18, knocking out the favourites in what remains New Zealand's earliest ever World Cup exit. For the All Blacks it was heartbreak, for France it was glory. For the rest of the rugby world it was the night Wayne Barnes became a household name, for better or worse. Years later, Barnes admitted the pass was indeed forward, but the history books do not carry an asterisk. The scoreboard never changes, and for New Zealand fans, that quarter-final still feels less like a rugby match and more like a crime scene. Australia versus Scotland 2015 Rugby World Cup quarter-final. Sometimes rugby heartbreak comes down to one moment, one whistle, one call, and for Scotland, in the 2015 Rugby World Cup quarter-final against Australia, it was all three at once. It was pouring rain at Twickenham, and against all odds, Scotland were leading by 2 points with just 2 minutes left. Australia attacked, the ball spilled loose, it ricocheted off an Aussie player, then touched a Scot, and ended up in the hands of another Scot who was standing forward. Referee Craig Joubert blew for offside and gave Australia a penalty. That decision changed everything. Bernard Foley stepped up, slotted the kick, and Australia snatched the win, 35-34. Scotland were out of the World Cup. The next day, World Rugby did something almost unheard of. They admitted the referee had got it wrong. Under the laws, the right decision should have been a scrum to Australia, not a penalty. But under the rules at the time, Joubert was not allowed to check with the TMO for that specific incident. He had to make the call on the spot. It was a brutal way to lose. For Scotland, it felt like daylight robbery, sealed with a whistle. And the punchline? The official verdict was clear. Wrong call, wrong time, wrong victim. If you enjoyed this, there's plenty more rugby videos in the works. I would greatly appreciate it if you could subscribe. Thanks for watching.